Good morning and thank you so much for joining us on Africa This Morning. It is the 20th of May 2014. I'm Beryl Ooro. Let's start the bulletin with a look at the top stories.
Kitengela exhumation. A mass grave containing 7 bodies discovered in Kitengela. Anglo leasing. Attorney General Githu Muigai defends State Law Office handling of Anglo leasing. Land records refurbishment. The Ministry of Lands reopens following a 10-day closure.
We start off in East Africa. 7 bodies have been exhumed from 2 mass graves in Kitengela in what is believed to be a land ownership row. The government pathologist Ooro Johansen said a post-mortem will be carried out today so as to ascertain the causes of the deaths. Our reporter Brenda Zeda was in Kitengela and brings us the report.
Monday morning, government pathologists and morgue attendants were well prepared to exhume bodies from the mass graves. Dressed in white clothes and nose masks, they found remains that had decayed extensively, making it hard for them to know the cause of deaths immediately. The stench coming from this area can tell you that things have not been right for the past 3 days. Now, police and pathologists have been digging through the hole since morning just to get to know how many bodies have been piled inside there. 2 kilometers away from the first grave where 6 bodies were recovered, another grave was discovered and 1 body was recovered. The level of decomposition of the second body indicated that the deceased was buried around the same time the other 6 were buried.
The first site, we found 6 bodies which were in the same grave. They were piled on top of each other in one grave, and they were in different levels of decomposition. This was a site about 2 kilometers from this site where we found the 6 bodies, where we found 1 body hidden in a cave. When I look at that body also, it looked like they could have died at around the same time.
The nature of the remains indicated that they had been buried for less than 4 weeks, prompting Ooro to conclude that the 7 died around the same time. Ooro is now calling on relatives with missing persons to go to City Mortuary tomorrow before the post-mortem is carried out.
I'm appealing to members of the public whose relatives got missing to come forward to the mortuary tomorrow to help us in identify the bodies, and also some of them might be difficult to identify, so we might have to take also DNA from the relatives and the bodies to match and to find out whether they're the same relatives.
The area leaders have accused the security agencies in that area for laxity in fighting insecurity and now want the police to carry out thorough investigations towards the incident.
Kama viongozi wa Kitengela, kama wananchi wa Kajiado County, tunasema tukio hili ni tukio mbaya.
We feel the CS, Honorable Lenku, and the PS, they really need to come up with a team to investigate what is happening, particularly in Kitengela.
Kajiado County Commissioner Laban Kobai pegged the killings to a fierce battle rival between land brokers, possibly affiliated to the divided outlawed Mungiki sect. Authorities are yet to identify the bodies that were recovered from 2 graves here in Kitengela over the weekend. Government chief pathologist is expected to carry out autopsy to determine the manner and the cause of death. Reporting for Ebro Africa News, I'm Brenda Zeda in Embakasi, Kitengela.
Still in Kenya, the Attorney General Githu Muigai has given his response to the uproar against the Anglo leasing payout and has sharply defended the State Law Office over the Anglo leasing cases, saying Kenya had 12 years to gather evidence and win the twin cases in Geneva and London.
Last week, after he authorized the Treasury to pay Anglo leasing debts amounting to 1.4 billion shillings, President Uhuru Kenyatta criticized the State Law Office and demanded they up their game.
I was not the one who was representing the country. And that is why I am saying we must up our game so that our council can stand by what all Kenyans, including myself, believe, that we should not be paying this. And we need to be able to win those battles in the courtroom. Because unfortunately, out there in the international community, they're not interested in what I said in Parliament. They are interested in the ruling of the courts and whether Kenya has obeyed the ruling of the court or not.
The Kenya government has a defense saying that these transactions were corrupt. But it is now 10 years since the Kenya government made those allegations. In Kenya, there isn't a single criminal case pending relating to this. So what does he say? He said it is therefore unlikely that the Kenya government can prove these allegations to the standard.
The Law Society of Kenya threatened to strip Githu Muigai of his senior counsel status and asked him to resign following the failure of Kenya's defense in the cases.
I think myself that the treatment they have meted out to me in the last 72 hours is totally unjustified. I think it is highly regrettable. I think it is actuated by other considerations other than the facts that I have talked to you about. I regret that the society is being managed in that way.
Githu said besides the former Attorney General Amos Wako, there are more other people who are supposed to be held responsible for Anglo leasing deals.
Now let me assure you, it is not for the Attorney General's office to say what has been supplied or not supplied. But the Ministry of Communication and PwC, their consultants, consistently admitted that Kenya had received broadband capacity from this company. Indeed, the project was launched by the late Honorable John Michuki with a lot of fanfare. And for 2 years, nobody had complained about what was supplied. It is not for us to say how much broadband is this, how much is that. We don't know, we are lawyers.
The Anglo leasing scandal, which started before the 2002 election of former President Mwai Kibaki, involved state contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars.
The man you see in front of you is the mortician. The patient died on the operating table a long time ago. The patient died on the operating table a long time ago. Githu Muigai is a mortician. If you think the patient should have lived, ask the surgeons.
For Ebro Africa News, I'm Esbon Mogambe.
From the judiciary to the political scene, just 2 days after the Code Coalition threatened to impeach President Uhuru Kenyatta over what they term as bad governance, the Jubilee Coalition affiliates from both the Senate and Parliament have come out guns blazing defending the head of state. The leaders, led by Senate Leader of Majority Kindiki Kithure, say the opposition is scavenging on national problems and blaming them on the government.
Senate Majority Leader Kindiki Kithure says the Code Coalition's call to impeach the president is a waste of time and a gimmick by the opposition to stay relevant.
The impeachment provisions concerning the president are in the Constitution. And they talk about certain numbers. And numbers don't lie. So even to suggest that the opposition intends to bring an impeachment motion while the Constitution puts a very high threshold for impeachment, for me, makes me to believe that the members of the opposition were simply trying to provide news for the weekend and Monday newspapers.
The Code Coalition threatened to start holding nationwide mass demonstrations to mount more pressure on the government for the president to step down, a move the government Chief Whip Kato Olemetito terms as a cake.
Trying to psych the country 3 years down to an election, trying to divide the country more, it doesn't really make any sense. There are other civil ways of engaging the government of the day on how the policy should be developed.
TNA, a party within the Jubilee coalition, has defended the president's decision to pay 1.4 billion shillings to the architects of Anglo-leasing, which has been receiving a lot of criticism.
And we have said, and we repeat it and reiterate it, we are paying that 1.4 billion to safeguard over 23 billion shillings, but we are coming for those who committed these illegalities.
Well, it's just over a year since the government came into place, and it still remains a push and shove between them and its main opposition, the Cod Coalition. Whether or not they will be able to take on the dare and battle it out in Parliament with the Jubilee coalition still remains a question in so many people's minds. For Ivory Africa News, I am Akisa Wandera in Nairobi.
Barely a week since the new National Youth Service Director, Dr. Nelson Githinji, was sworn in, a cloud seems to surround his appointment. Igembe South MP Mithika Linturi says the plot to impeach Devolution Cabinet Secretary Anne Waiguru over former NYS boss Kiplimo Rigut is entirely the TNA party's idea and not URP, as largely speculated.
While terming Rugut's removal from office as unlawful and unconstitutional, the Igembe South Member of Parliament said President Uhuru Kenyatta is being misadvised by people surrounding him.
I personally believe that if you are indeed a friend to a king, you must be in a position to tell the king that, Mr. King, today you are dressed indecently. Whatever you said was not right or did not go well with the public. So what I mean is that the people that surround the president, to the extent that when things are being done that are not right, will never be seen, are things that we want now to really tell him that these things are not right. We don't want that situation of whereby people will be dancing to the king every time to tell him all is well when all is not well.
Linturi claims the transfer of Rugut and replacing him with Githinji might give birth to another tribal debate that the government is not prepared for.
You found the issues going around about the issue of the suspension or the demotion of one Rugut from the National Youth Service. You've also heard people talking about a matter to do with bringing in a motion to get her out of office, and especially the Star, as in one of his speeches today, has quoted me and linked the issue of the motion to remove Anne Waiguru from office to the URP wing of the coalition. I want to make it very clear that the angle that was taken, in my view, is intended to divide the Jubilee coalition.
Dr. Githinji was until his new appointment the tourism secretary and replaces Mr. Kiplimo Rugut, who has been redeployed. Akisa Wandera, Ivory Africa News, Nairobi.
The Lands Ministry today witnessed the reopening of the Central Nairobi Records Registries and the banking hall after a 10-day closure to better their services to the public by reorganizing records and addressing cases of pending workload, lost or misplaced files.
The Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development has over the years experienced cases of double land allocation, land grabbing and fraud. But with the reopening of the Central Nairobi Records Registries and the banking hall, the ministry seeks to bring services closer to the public as well as reduce the previous pending workload. The Cabinet Secretary for Lands, Housing and Urban Development says the ministry has revamped its website to avoid any further land issues and irregularities.
Rearrange our files to make sure that we know what file is held where and what it contains, so that in future we are able to say you cannot open a new file to actually start giving people information on that file when there is another file. So that now we have been able to do. But what is going to cure that problem certainly will be to do digitization, to computerize, to automate the systems here, so that nobody can add on something else within the system.
The ministry records 10 days from the inception of the journey towards transforming service delivery by retrieving, recording and reshelving 1,322,800 files and records, and has also set up 3 hotlines where clients can access information. Some of those who had come for service delivery commended the new system.
The minister is doing something good for the people of Kenya. Because the problem is that at the first, the people were coming to look for title deeds. It was taking a long time. But now, maybe things are going to be different now, from now.
The ministry has procured 2 consultancies to develop software in preparation for digitization of all registry files. For Ebru Africa, I'm Miriam Kanyugo.
5 people, among them a Congolese national who are suspected to be international ivory smugglers, have been arrested at Mariakani area of Kilifi County with ivory. They were ferrying the ivory in a hearse car when they were arrested.
The suspects had decorated the vehicle carrying the tusks with red ribbons to disguise it as a funeral car. Kalalenio CPD David Kirena said police who were acting on a tip-off laid the suspects at Mariakani Weighbridge as they were driving towards Mombasa at around 2 a.m. today. Also in their possession were funeral programs bearing photographs of 2 different people. The suspects told the police that they were headed to Mombasa to pick bodies of 2 male adults who had died and were to be buried in Machakos. According to police, ivory smugglers have devised new ways of transporting ivories and other game trophies from forest to the market, where they make a fortune out of the illegal trade.
The total is about 25 to 40.
The Congolese national was arrested in Mombasa after being lured by police to come and collect his cargo. Police say that suspects will be arraigned in court tomorrow.
To West Africa, a car bomb exploded in Nigeria's second most populous city of Kano on Sunday night, killing at least 4 and wounding 5 others. So far, no group has claimed responsibility, but this incident follows a string of terror attacks by the militant group Boko Haram. Police Superintendent Adrenle Shibana said the car exploded on Sunday night before the bomber reached his target of the restaurants and bars lining Gold Coast Street. Multiple blasts in Sabongari killed at least 24 people last July, and a suicide bomber drove a car filled with explosives into the neighborhood's bus station in March 2013, killing at least 25 people. The group claimed responsibility for 2 other explosions last month in the capital of Abuja that killed more than 120 people and wounded more than 200. In July 2012, about 150 people died in a series of coordinated attacks by Boko Haram. The bombing comes as the Nigerian authorities continue to search for more than 200 schoolgirls kidnapped by Boko Haram. African leaders meeting in Paris at the weekend agreed to wage war on Boko Haram, pledging to share intelligence and coordinate action against the group. Heavily armed gunmen stormed Libya's parliament over the weekend, demanding its suspension and claiming loyalty to a renegade army general. Smoke rose over parliament buildings after gunmen attacked and then withdrew. Gunfire erupted across Tripoli, where rival rebels clashed in some of the worst violence in the city since the 2011 uprising against Muammar Gaddafi.
Any alliance of militias lining up against rebel groups threatens to deepen chaos in the OPEC oil producer, where a fragile government already struggles to gain legitimacy and impose authority over brigades of former fighters.
We announce the freezing of operation of the General National Congress. It will no longer play a role in any matters dealing with the sovereignty of our nation, its legislation or administrative matters.
Haftar's spokesman Mohammed El Hajazi said Fernanda's group was allied to the former general. Fernanda said their movement was not a coup, but added that parliament had no legitimacy and should hand over power to a 60-member body that was recently elected to rewrite Libya's constitution. It was not immediately clear how much backing Haftar's men had within Libya's nascent regular armed forces and the country's powerful brigades of former rebels, or whether the parliament was fully under government control after the attack. Witnesses said armed local residents were blocking roads to the parliament building after the attack, but their identities and affiliation were not clear. Haftar, once a Gaddafi ally who turned against him over the 1980s war in Chad, fueled rumors of a coup in February when he appeared on television in uniform calling for a caretaker government to end Libya's crisis. Since the end of Gaddafi's one-man rule, militias of ex-rebels have become de facto power brokers in the vacuum of Libya's political queues.
The European Union Observation Mission chief says the administrative challenges which held up election observers from deployment across Egypt ahead of the presidential election have been overcome, and that despite of the delay, the observation mission will go ahead.
Due to some administrative challenges, these observers were not deployed across the country as envisaged. However, thanks to the joint efforts and the constructive engagement of the Egyptian authorities, I am pleased to announce that the EU Election Observation Mission is able to continue to observe the presidential elections in Egypt as widely as possible throughout the country. However, because of these delays, we need to adjust our mission in order to operate in line with our standard observation rules.
And that story brings us to the end of the Bulletin on Africa this morning. Join us next as we take a look at other stories taking the lead on our social media platform segment on Trend.